All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something, well, pretty crucial, I think, for anyone really who's trying to grasp, where India fits in the whole global scheme of things.
Yeah,
Especially, I'd say, for those of you keeping a close eye on the UPSC syllabus.
absolutely.
It's a big one. India's role in global geopolitics.
Right.
So, we hear a lot about India's economy. It's booming. It's making waves.
It is, yeah.
But have we really stopped to think about, India's involvement?
Yeah,
Or maybe more importantly, its potential to be even more involved
right.
in tackling those really major international conflicts, that we see unfolding all around us.
That's a key question, isn't it?
It is. And that's precisely what we're going to dig into today. Well, we got a fascinating article here.
Okay.
And it really takes a look at India's diplomatic history.
Okay.
Where we've come from and kind of where we stand now in this global landscape that's shifting, dramatically.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely a dynamic time, isn't it?
It is. And our aim, in this deep dive, it's really to get to grips with this question.
Okay.
Given all of India's strengths
Right.
and this changing world.
Yeah.
Shouldn't it be taking a more active role, in actually trying to resolve these international conflicts that are popping up,
Yeah.
and in shaping, global security as a whole?
That's the core issue we're exploring.
Exactly. So maybe to kick things off, why don't we take a step back?
Okay.
Look back a bit, right?
Yeah.
This article reminds us, and it's an important point, that India, hasn't always been on the sidelines.
Right.
We had those decisive actions right in our own neighborhood.
Yeah.
Bangladesh, the Maldives, Sri Lanka.
Right.
These weren't the moves of a country that just sits back and watches.
No, absolutely not. These were instances where India demonstrated, its capacity to really get involved regionally when it felt its core strategic interests were at stake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there is, and the article makes this pretty clear,
Yeah.
there is a contrast, right, between those times and maybe, more recent times,
Right.
where some might say we've been a bit, hesitant when it comes to those bigger global conflicts.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And it brings to mind, for me at least, it brings to mind NM.
The non-aligned movement.
A non-aligned movement. That was, for a long time, that was India's, stance.
Yeah.
On the world stage.
Right.
This commitment to global politics, but, very much on our own terms,
Yeah.
steering clear of those big Cold War power blocks.
Yeah, NM was a really powerful statement, wasn't it?
It was.
Of India's independent foreign policy, this desire to chart its own course, separate from the superpowers and their rivalries.
Absolutely. But what the article kind of highlights is a shift, right?
Yeah, it points to an evolution
An evolution.
in India's approach.
To what they're calling, what is it, a multi-alignment strategy.
Multi-alignment, exactly.
It's less about that unified non-alignment and more about building up this web, right?
Right.
Of bilateral relationships.
A diverse network of partnerships
Exactly.
tailored to specific needs and circumstances.
And to be fair, the article does acknowledge those positive contributions that India's making.
Absolutely.
Vaccine matrix,
Yes.
the efforts on climate change,
Yeah.
humanitarian aid.
And Northern initiatives.
These are definitely, steps in the right direction.
They show that India is willing to step up and contribute to global well-being.
For sure.
But there's this fundamental question.
Yeah.
And the article really brings it to the forefront.
Yeah.
And it's a question that I think is crucial for anyone thinking about India's future role.
Yeah.
And that includes you.
Absolutely.
If you're prepping for the UPSC,
Yeah.
the question is this approach,
Yeah.
alongside this reluctance to really get involved
Yeah.
in actively resolving these big conflicts, like the Russia-Ukraine war,
Right.
or the Israel-Palestine situation.
Mm-hmm.
Does that truly align with India's long-term goal
Yeah.
of being a major player on the world stage?
Yeah.
A significant global power?
That is the question, isn't it?
It's a valid question to ask.
It is. And, we have seen Prime Minister Modi, he's engaged, right? Diplomatically.
He has.
Speaking with leaders in both Russia and Ukraine.
Right.
But as the article points out, India has largely remained outside
Yeah.
those formal peace negotiation processes.
Right. We haven't really been at the heart of those discussions.
Exactly. And then there are those abstentions, right, from those
Yeah.
key UNSC votes on Ukraine.
Yeah, those were noticed.
They were. And while, that might, reflect a desire for neutrality,
Yeah.
it does make you wonder.
Yeah.
With all the influence India has,
Right.
particularly among developing nations,
Yeah.
have we really utilized that position,
Mm-hmm.
that unique position that we have
Yeah.
for meaningful mediation?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
For anyone analyzing India's foreign policy,
Yeah.
the article really challenges us to consider this.
Yeah.
Shouldn't India, with its economic strength,
Growing. Yeah.
its established diplomatic credibility,
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't it be aiming for a more central role
Yeah.
in this difficult but essential work
Right.
of global conflict resolution?
Absolutely. So okay, let's flip it, right? Okay.
Let's say India chooses not to take this more proactive stance.
Right.
What are the potential downsides?
Yeah, that's important to consider, isn't it?
It is. And the article, it outlines some pretty significant risks,
It does.
starting with this idea that we might actually be ceding influence to other, up-and-coming middle powers.
That's right.
These other countries that are eager to step in,
Mm-hmm.
fill that void.
Yeah, it's like if India doesn't step up, someone else will.
Exactly.
Right.
And the article gives us some really interesting examples.
Yeah.
You look at Turkey
Right.
hosting those Ukraine-Russia talks
Back in 2022.
back in 2022. Yeah,
It really raised their profile, didn't it?
it did. Yeah.
As a neutral actor capable of facilitating those high stakes discussions.
It did. It really did.
Really put them on the map diplomatically.
Exactly. Position them as a serious diplomatic player.
Yeah. In a major European conflict.
Yeah, they showed they could handle it.
Absolutely. And then you've got Saudi Arabia
Right.
using, their oil wealth,
Mm-hmm.
their strategic location to host talks
Right.
involving, the U.S., Russia, Ukraine,
The big players.
the big players, all of them.
Yeah, it's a clear demonstration of their growing influence.
It is.
Diplomatically.
It's a clear sign of their clout,
Absolutely. And even consider Qatar,
Okay.
a smaller nation.
Right.
But they managed to broker a ceasefire
Wow.
between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo.
That's impressive.
These examples, I think they show that even states without India's, sheer size or economic might,
Right.
they can still exert influence
Yeah,
if they're willing to engage proactively,
absolutely.
diplomatically.
So it's not just about, having a seat at the table.
Right.
It's about actually shaping the conversation. Yeah.
The agenda, the discussions,
Absolutely.
and ultimately, the potential solutions to these global security challenges.
Yeah, it's about being a leader.
Exactly.
Mm.
And the article, it also touches upon something else
Okay.
that's really crucial for India's standing in the world.
Right.
This idea of, the potential erosion
Mm-hmm.
of its credibility
Right.
as a leader, specifically of the global South.
Yeah, that's a key point.
This is a big one.
It is. India's championed the interests of developing nations for a long time.
Right.
But if we're seen as hesitant or unwilling to really get involved in resolving these major crises,
Right, yeah.
that disproportionately affect those nations.
Mhm.
It could damage that trust.
Yeah.
It
Yes.
could weaken that claim to leadership.
It makes you wonder if allies would start to question India's commitment,
Exactly.
to the principles that it advocates for.
Yeah, if you're not walking the walk. Exactly.
People start to notice.
Absolutely. And that really ties in, doesn't it, with this whole idea of the expectations
Yeah,
that come with being a rising power.
absolutely.
I mean, India, we're the 5th largest economy.
That's right.
We've got these aspirations, longstanding aspirations
Mhm.
for a permanent seat on the UN Security Council.
Right.
The article suggests, and I think it's a fair point,
Yeah,
that these ambitions, they come with certain responsibilities.
exactly.
And those responsibilities, they go beyond just issuing statements.
Yeah.
When there's a global crisis.
It's about action.
It is.
It's about demonstrating leadership.
Absolutely.
The article draws a very clear link
Yeah.
between India's argument for that UNSC legitimacy, being the world's largest democracy,
Yeah.
and its willingness to actually roll up its sleeves and get involved.
Yeah.
On those global issues, even outside that existing UNSC framework,
Right.
if India is not seen as a problem solver,
Yeah.
proactive on the world stage,
Right.
it weakens its own case
Yeah.
for a more prominent role
Yeah.
within that very body.
Exactly, exactly. And then there was Prime Minister Modi's statement, that was widely noted.
Oh, yeah. This is not an era of war.
This is not an era of war.
Yeah.
It resonated with a lot lot of people, didn't it?
It did, yeah.
This idea of moving beyond conflict.
Yeah.
But the article, it raises a really important question,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one that we need to consider
For sure.
without that concrete follow-up.
Right.
Without the action to back it up.
Yeah.
Is there a risk of it just being seen as, a good soundbite?
Right. A nice sentiment,
A nice sentiment.
but not much beyond that.
Exactly, exactly. Rather than a genuine, commitment to building peace.
Yeah. That's the risk.
It is.
And while, the sentiment is great,
Mm-hmm.
the article argues that India needs to show its commitment through tangible action, efforts to facilitate dialogue,
Yeah.
de-escalate tension in those conflict zones.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it could be seen as a missed opportunity
Right.
to translate that powerful message into real diplomatic action.
I think that's a very fair point. And then the article moves on, to talk about these broader strategic setbacks
Okay.
that India might face
All right.
in this global order that's rapidly evolving.
Yeah, things are changing quickly.
They are. And it talks about this increasing geopolitical fragmentation
Right.
and the potential danger of India being left out.
Yeah.
Of those really crucial negotiations.
The ones that shape the future.
that shape the future. Exactly.
Yeah, that's where the long-term consequences
Yeah.
of a passive approach become really clear.
Yeah, they do.
The article, it highlights this increasing possibility of a new understanding,
Okay.
maybe even an implicit deal
Mm-hmm.
between the U.S. and China, potentially leading to these distinct spheres of influence.
Oh, wow.
And if India doesn't, actively assert its interests,
Yeah.
engage in these shifting power dynamics,
Right.
it could find itself marginalized
Yeah.
in those key geopolitical arrangements within Asia.
It's almost like, being left behind, right? As the world reshapes itself.
If you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Exactly. And that naturally brings us to the Quad, right?
Yeah.
That security dialogue.
With the U.S., Japan, Australia,
Right.
specifically designed to counterbalance China.
Exactly.
China's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific.
Mm-hmm. And the article suggests, and it's a poor point to consider,
Yeah.
that India's, hesitancy to be more proactive
Mm-hmm.
could actually weaken the Quad's strategic relevance.
Exactly. The Quad's effectiveness.
Yeah.
It depends on the active engagement of all its members.
Right.
If India is seen as less willing, hesitant to take a more assertive role in maintaining stability,
Yeah.
it could diminish the Quad's overall significance.
Yeah.
And, by extension, India's own position
In the Indo-Pacific.
in the Indo-Pacific.
Absolutely. And finally, when it comes to those risks of inaction,
Okay.
the article, it touches upon China's, ever-expanding influence.
Right, through things like the Belt and Road Initiative.
Exactly. The BRI stretching across, Africa, Latin America, South Asia.
It's ambitious.
It is. And the argument is that India's current, more reserved approach,
Yeah.
it limits our ability to effectively counter that growing presence.
That's the challenge.
It is.
India has expressed concerns about the strategic implications of the BRI.
Yeah.
But a more active diplomatic stance
Right.
could open up avenues for India to build stronger partnerships,
Yeah.
offer alternative development models
Okay.
in these regions,
Right.
and therefore more effectively balance China's influence.
Absolutely. So given all of these potential downsides, right?
Yeah.
What direction does the article suggest India should take,
Right.
to really establish itself as that key geopolitical player?
Okay, well, it lays out a few crucial steps. First
Yeah.
and foremost,
Yeah.
it emphasizes the need to strengthen India's regional policies.
Okay.
It's not enough to just rely on those bilateral ties,
Right.
particularly in those strategically important regions
Yeah.
like West Asia, Central Asia, East Asia.
Mm-hmm.
active participation in those regional frameworks.
Yeah.
It's essential.
Absolutely.
The article points out, for example, that while India has good relations with Central Asian countries,
Right.
its reduced engagement in the SKO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization,
Yeah.
it limits its potential influence in that area.
So we need to be more involved in those regional groups.
Exactly.
Okay.
And in East Asia, following that decision to opt out of RCEP,
The Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership.
yeah, the article really stresses the need for India to find alternative strategies
Right.
to boost its economic ties in that crucial region.
Okay, so looking beyond, just our immediate neighbors,
Right.
the article highlights a big opportunity for India to deepen its ties with Europe.
Europe, yeah.
Given all the geopolitical pressures they're facing right now, there's a real chance for India to step in, enhance its presence,
Yeah.
forge those stronger partnerships.
Yeah, maybe it gets marked.
And the idea of pursuing a trade agreement with the U.S.
Right.
that's presented as a potential foundation
Yeah.
for broader collaboration.
With the EU.
With the EU, exactly. But maybe the most crucial recommendation here
Yeah.
is for India to take on a more proactive role in conflict resolution itself.
That's right. Getting involved in actually trying to solve these problems.
And the article is careful to say it doesn't mean India has to be the sole mediator
Right, not in every crisis.
in every crisis, yeah.
It's more about being ready,
Right.
willing to step up,
Mm-hmm.
facilitate dialogue, negotiations.
Absolutely.
And the article reminds us, India has a history of bridging divides.
It does, yeah.
It cites our involvement in the Korean War,
Mm-hmm.
our diplomatic efforts within the UNSC during our recent tenure.
Yeah,
These are examples of India navigating complex situations,
yeah.
finding common ground.
Absolutely. So if we bring it all together,
Okay.
the main message
Yeah.
from this deep dive, based on the arguments in this article,
Yeah.
it seems to be this:
Okay.
India's ambition to be a real global power
Yeah.
in this world that's changing so rapidly.
Right.
It can't just rely on economic growth.
Right.
It needs a much more active, strategic engagement.
Yeah.
In the really complex realities of global geopolitics.
Absolutely. The article underscores that the international order, it's undergoing a huge transformation.
It is.
More unilateralism.
Yeah.
Global powers realigning themselves.
Mm-hmm.
India faces a choice.
Yeah.
React passively to these shifts
Yeah.
or actively try to shape them.
Mm.
By taking a more proactive role.
Yeah.
India can not only strengthen its own influence,
Right.
but also contribute to a more stable and balanced world.
Yeah.
And that's a key consideration
Absolutely.
for anyone following international relations,
For sure.
especially for the UPSC.
Absolutely, especially for the UPSC. And for you, our listener, especially if you're preparing for the UPSC, diligently following these international developments as part of your daily current affairs,
Right.
consider this.
Okay.
How can India's historical commitment to non-alignment
Right.
be, reinterpreted,
Yeah.
effectively applied
Mm-hmm.
in this multipolar world that we live in today?
Yeah, that's a great question.
How can India engage proactively in global conflict resolution without, getting tangled up in rigid alliances
Right.
or taking sides in every dispute?
Yeah.
Think deeply about this, the implications of this whole discussion for India's foreign policy
Right.
and its long-term aspirations
Mm-hmm.
on the world stage.
These are the kind of analytical questions
Yeah.
that are so important for your UPSC preparation.
They are.
They require careful thought,
Mm-hmm.
nuanced understanding.
Absolutely.
That's what your UPSC prep demands when you're analyzing India's role.
Exactly.
in the world today.
Absolutely. So if you found this deep dive insightful,
Yeah.
and it's helped you, think more critically about India's role in the world, which, let's face it, is directly relevant
Absolutely.
to your UPSC mains current events,
Right.
please do like and subscribe
Yeah, subscribe to The Deep Dive.
to the deep dive for more of these analyses.
More deep dives.
And also, leave a comment, any
Yeah.
further questions you have below.
We love hearing from you
We do.
as you grapple with these important issues.
Absolutely. The source for this deep dive, it was a really thought-provoking article from The Hindu.
Yeah, great read.
So, thanks for joining us.
See you next time.